how when Chazal they annul a marriage, we said that if a person, according to Shimon Gamliel, he says that if a person, Reb Shimon Gamliel, after he made the takana, that a person has to inform the agent that he's canceled. That it's Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel has okay. No, that's that. But Rabbi Gamliel originally enacted that you have to inform the agent or the woman that the get was canceled. Right? Now the question is, if he did not and he canceled, is the cancellation canceled or not? So Shimon Gamliel says it's not canceled. The agency is still in place. And how is it possible? Gemara says Afkinu Rabbanu Kedushim Yinei. Right? That's what the Gemara answers. They annul the marriage. So therefore, it's as if the get is still intact. This is still effective get. So she's permitted to remarry if she receives this kind of get, even though the get is not really a viable get, but it through the. You're getting caught up in the detail here.
So I would say it's not a viable get because the Raisa is not a viable get.
The man, he's not an agent of the husband any longer. You cannot give a get unless you're the agent.
Technically, it works.
Factually, it works. But how could it work if the basis for being an effective divorcer, terminator, you have to be the husband. He's not the husband any longer. If the agency was canceled, was terminated.
She got the get already.
She received the get after the cancellation. After the cancellation. So we say, since the husband was not permitted to cancel the agent, only in his presence, or inform her, and he did not, she's permitted to remarry. So the question, how could she remarry? She's a married woman. So it says, Chazal, they annul the marriage. The first marriage is annulled. It's as if she was never married. So in terms of perception, people say, why she's remarrying? Because she has that document. But factually speaking, she's remarrying because she was never married to the first man. Because the marriage is annulled. Therefore, there is no mamzer. Okay? There's no mamzering. They don't have to take an action. It's on the books. It's on the books. A man who cancels agency unbeknown to the agent or the woman, the cancellation is not recognized, and the woman is permitted to remarry if she receives that document. That's the end of the story. No, rabbinically she's a divorcee. Rabbinically she's a divorcee. It's like a chalutza. A woman receives chalitza. She's not permitted to marry Kohen. Of course, it has a semblance of a divorcee.
So, Rabbi, a man lives with his wife 25 years. And he does everything by the book with her. She does it as well. Procreate, they have all the shema and all this. And then this divorce thing happens. And Chazal said, you will never marry. But they lived like, practically, they lived like husband and wife in every sense of the word. There's no dispute.
Could I ask you a question? Could I ask you a question? Person goes, has the best intent in the world, and he thought the witnesses, one of them came from a line of the most prestigious line of Jews. It was revealed that a great-grandmother wasn't Jewish. So he thought he had a kosher witness at the wedding. It wasn't a kosher witness. He did everything right he wanted to, but he wasn't married. The marriage was not a marriage. Same thing.
I think we've learned once that Gentiles, they're not. If they live together and they actually function, there is such a
That's something else. That's common law marriage. By a non-Jew, it's common law marriage.
It's marriage.
Until they decide to separate, they're
marriage.
married.
It is marriage. And if that person
commits adultery, she's an adulteress. She's an adulteress. Correct.
Okay. So
but that's not regarding a Jew. It has nothing to do with a Jew.
There's no such concept. So
Isha niknas b'shlosha terokim. One of two ways. You have to go through that process. The process is a faulty process. She's not married.
And through cohabitation, it doesn't work.
Well, it says they also. It does work, but it says since the cohabitation was contingent on the condoning of Chazal, and they don't condone this marriage, the marriage was never marriage. Retroactively. It's only if the Chazal. Correct. Because they don't condone it.
So there's no such concept as marriage for a Jew that doesn't conform to Chazal. There is no such
If
thing.
it doesn't conform to Chazal,
It's
even,
not marriage.
What about a man marries, a Kohen marries a divorcee? Right? Marries a divorcee. He's married, he has to give her a get. Even though he said Kedas Moshe Yisrael. There they don't annul the marriage. They don't annul the marriage. For Chalolim, even though he did the wrong thing, on a Torah level he violated.
You can't do it to voter, though, right?
Separate. Is the woman
Yeah, they're
if she commits adultery, she's an adulteress. He said Kedas Moshe Yisrael. Right? This is definitely not condoned by the Torah or by anybody. They're living in sin.
So how did the marriage take effect? There was no rabbi officiating this marriage.
He was a rabbi officiating.
Why? How could he officiate?
Kasha b'mayis.
Because, I mean,
The man, you don't need a rabbi. What happens if the man himself gets two
okay,
witnesses?
So he does it through Bila or whatever.
No, he gets two witnesses, and because Harry and Jerry, right? The Kiddush Club. Gives her a ring and says, Harei Mukadeshes Li. She's married.
That's a marriage.
That's a marriage, finished. He gave her something of minimum penny value. Gave her, a shot of Johnny Walker Gold Label. Okay? Okay, blue label, black label. Okay?
That's a marriage.
That's a marriage.
So why would the Chazal have accepted that?
Because there the Torah says she's married. The Torah says she's married. There's a pasuk. It says Loichal Lazaro. Because the more asks the question in Tmura, there's a machlokes of Ayin Rava. I ovid lo mahani, I ovid mahani. The Torah says not to do something, you do it. Is it effective or not? So one opinion is, if the Torah says not to do something, it cannot be effective. Because then you're being rewarded for doing the wrong thing. Someone asks, so what about Kohen marries a Grusha? The marriage is affected, although he's violating, he's living in sin. Someone says that's the exception, because it's Loichal Lazaro. He cannot desecrate his seeds. It's his seed, he is desecrated, but the marriage is a marriage. That's what the Torah is alluding to. That's the exception. So if the Torah says it's valid, Chazal are not going to annul it.
No, there's a second marriage.
Could be the 15th marriage.
No, I'm saying with procreation, children is not the issue.
Doesn't have to be the issue. There was a story in Philadelphia many years ago. There was a reform rabbi. He must have had some little bit of knowledge. And she didn't have a get. And she asked the rabbi, do I need a get? He says, you passed menopause. You don't need a get because it's only a question of illegitimacy. She conceived a child, and she had a mamzer. Story goes back maybe 50 years ago. Because you only need to get to avoid this problem. Okay, has nothing to do with it. That's what I wanted to show you. See, here the Gemara uses the term Kin Rabbanu Glushminei, because Kol Mekarish Daiter Rabbanu Mekarish. So from this Gemara it's indicated, of course, it was a conditional marriage. But if it wouldn't be the conditional, then Chazal will not be able to revoke it, to annul it. And here it says, Kol de Mekarish Daiter Rabbanu Mekarish. Take a look at the on scroll translation. Whoever marries, be married, it's based on the willingness of the Chachamim. Meaning, if they condone it, it's a marriage. If they don't condone it, I don't want it to be a marriage. So the man, when he marries them initially, it's conditional. So therefore, simply say we don't, so it's not a marriage. Initially, he never meant to marry her. If they're not in agreement with this union. The Gemara Bava Basra doesn't say that. Gemara says Afkir Rabbanan Kushimei. They just annul the marriage. Doesn't say because he initially had the intent based on what they want or they don't want. So Tosas originally says, it seems to be they're arguing, that the Gemara here is arguing with the Gemara Bava Basra, vice versa. Tosas says no. The Gemara, it's either way. Here the Gemara is saying usually the person does, but even if the person does not, if it's monetary, they say hefker bezin hefker on the money that he had given her. So the Gemara says, what do you do with Bia? Right? What do you do with Bia? If he marries her through cohabitation. But it has nothing to do with disowning something. The act itself is marriage. So Tosas says over there, it's the famous Tosas, that even though we say with Chazal they're able to legislate fences, it's always b'shev al taseh, it's always in a passive state. Here they're able to revoke. They're annulling the marriage by revoking, saying the act that was done is not recognized by the Torah. And they're empowered to do such a thing, and therefore the marriage is not a marriage.
Just to go on David's line for a second. So if a Jewish man and a Jewish Jewish women have relations. They never get married, but they stay together for 5 years.
So let's
Same
talk.
apartment, they live together, everything.
Okay.
They carry on like a married couple, but they're never married.
Wait. Okay.
What
Let's
is
talk.
the-
Okay.
What's the status of
Okay.
that?
That's a good question. We've discussed this many times, except you couldn't hear through the partition, so you're not aware of this. So I will not fault you for this. Okay. It's a famous machlokus, Rav Moshe Feinstein and other gedolim. Gemara says that when a man, meaning if a person just has a relationship with a woman, it's considered a promiscuous act. But let's say a man lives with his wife as a husband and wife, raises a family as husband and wife. You say there the intent, there the act of cohabitation is an act of marriage. But it's only because people are aware that they're living as husband and wife. So since in the community there are kosher witnesses, being aware that they're living as husband and wife, they are the witnesses on the marriage. Okay? So Moshe Feinstein says
Unofficially.
it's the equivalent. The awareness is the equivalent.
Just the awareness.
It's the equivalent. That's the equivalent.
Don't
So
you
therefore,
know-
wait. Therefore, should we need a get?
She would.
So if you have a reform marriage, according to others, witnesses weren't kosher, but they lived as husband and wife, right? Not as they're just together, you know, as a convenience. They're raising a family, everything else. The marriage is a marriage. The Moshe Feinstein says that unless they're shomer Torah mitzvahs, that they value their spirituality and they're subject to the dictates of the Torah, this concept of Ein Odom Osbilos Mezuzah that has no meaning, has no value, the marriage is not a marriage, even if they're living together as husband and wife. And therefore, he says a get is not required. It's better to have a get, but if you can't get a get, the woman's permitted to remarry without a get. And that was the basis for all the people who had come from Russia. Many women came without their husbands, and they had no get. He permitted them to remarry because these people were atheists. They knew nothing. Therefore, the marriage originally, even though they lived as husband and wife, they had families, whatever it is, the woman was permitted to remarry without a get. Or if you have a situation where the husband is not going to give her a Jewish divorce, he says, I don't believe in that kind of thing. We have a civil divorce, it's enough. And he will not give her any circumstance. If it's a reform or conservative marriage, she doesn't need a get. She can remarry without a get.
Just came somewhere into Scandinavia. In Sweden and Copenhagen today, the majority of young people do not get married. They just live together. They have children. They just don't get married. They just don't get married. They don't value marriage. They don't see any benefit in it.
Let me ask you, and what about wives being with other men? Or they
No,
abide?
no, it's exclusive. They're monogamous. That they behave like husband and wife. They just don't get married.
On the Torah, for a non-Jew, that's a full-fledged marriage.
So the halakha is stricter with the non-Jew than with the Jew. The adultery thing,
Wait a second. Why does a Jew? The Rambam says that it's a puzzle of Molo and Zima. The world will be filled. The whole concept of illegitimacy only has to do with a Jew. A non-Jew, there's no such thing as mamzer. So therefore, by us, where we have to deal with the pedigree and illegitimacy, therefore there has to be an exclusivity in terms of relationship. Therefore, a man, when he marries, there's a process. And that process can only be terminated if there's a get, because of all the laws which have to do with the legitimacy of a person. A non-Jew, there's no relevance to legitimacy. You're together, you're there. Not together, it's irrelevant.
There's no stain on the children of a, quote, a non-Jewish mamzer.
There's no such thing as a non-Jewish
That's what
mamzer.
I'm saying. There's no stain.
Right. That's where this Reform rabbi got it from. Well, if there's not going to be legitimacy, so you don't need a get. It has nothing to do with it. Once you're locked into this relationship, the only way it can be terminated, you have to give a get, regardless whether the woman could conceive or can't conceive.
So back to my question, what's the status of the Kohen and the Kedusha? They're older and the children are not the issue.
They're living in sin.
They're living in sin.
They're living in sin.
But
And if he
it's-
marries her,
but
she's
it's a
married.
But it's a valid marriage.
Valid marriage. They're not allowed to. Every time they're together,
That's a promiscuous
it's a marriage, but
Every
it's
act
a
is promiscuous act.
it's a violation.
It's a violation.
Promiscuous act is even if they're not married. Here it's a specific violation of a man being married to a woman that he's not permitted to be married to. It's like, what about a person who marries a mamzeres? The marriage is a marriage. But every time he lives with her, he cohabits with her, it's a separate violation. It's a marriage. That's why I always say, people, they go to a friend's marriage, it's a conservative or reform marriage ceremony. They said, make sure to have kosher witnesses. Just to the contrary. It's better not to have kosher witnesses. Because based on the statistic, if the marriage doesn't last and she goes and has relations with someone else, it's adultery. Right? But if the witnesses aren't kosher, according to Moshe Feinstein, they were never married. Because it wasn't that the people are not observant people. It was never a marriage. So it's better not to have kosher witnesses at these marriages.
Try explain that too.
No, but to encourage it.
No, I said, but you try explain that.
You don't have to explain it.
You don't get the seven.
Thank you very much, but I'm doing this for your own interest. I'm declining to be a witness. Trust me, it's for your own interest.
Then I
You
can
could
give you a
just
show about it.
get two relatives being witnesses, even though they're kosher. Otherwise, it's still not counting.
Correct.
That would be ideal.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. You and Robert should be witnesses together. Hello, David. If you and Robert would be witnesses together, your brothers, relatives, so is she not qualified?
Yes, that's a different. I'll only do it with my brother.
Right.
I'll only do it with my brother.
Okay. So I just want to do Tosos over here. Okay? So this is the question I mentioned. A man is married to his niece, she commits adultery, he's able to cover up for her and protect her from the death penalty. What's going to be? Witnesses are going to come in, they're going to testify she committed adultery when she was married to him. What is he going to do? Yishlach lo get. He'll send a get through an agent. V'yivate shlo b'fnei hashliach. And he'll cancel it, not in the presence of the agent. Upaki kedushin, and then they annul the marriage. V'nimtza shi penuya. So the end result is she was never married. So what have we accomplished? V'omeri lo kosher. It's not difficult. They lochush eloshim chapo ler shlo kedin. Avol hochak, meaning avol hochak kedin mechaper uminator petura. Meaning, as long as his intent is what? Is to do, he's not covering up. So then, avol hocha kedin mechaper uminator petura. Meaning, he's saying like this: if he does it, it's valid. It's canceled. Before we said, why did they put a date in the get? So he shouldn't be able to do this. Right. So let's say he'll give a get without a date. So rabbinically, it's not a legal get. It wasn't written. So there he omitted the date to cover up for his daughter, for his wife who committed adultery. So people shouldn't know to believe that she was divorced. She received the document before she actually committed adultery. That's before. Right? That's why they allegedly has to be a date. So there he's giving an illegitimate get. The get is not a valid get.
It's not dated.
After they alleged that there must be a date, and he omitted the date, so the Bezdin should believe that the get was given before. That's not a legitimate get. It's not a legal document. Okay? Here, everything's done legally. Right? The get that was given, there was a legal get. He goes and he cancels it. He did the wrong thing. As long as he's still playing. He did nothing which is illegal in terms of the document. Right? He canceled. Therefore, it's canceled. Okay, 1 second.
So it does work.
It works. If Tosas later disagrees.
If it's dated.
It's dated.
It's dated. It's a dated get.
Dated.
Correct.
It's a valid get, and it's merely annulled.
And if he cancels it,
Problem solved.
The get is dated after she had the relationship.
yeah, right. So now he's going to ask a question. We had a Gemara in Makos. To be liable for any punishment, you have to be forewarned. It's called hasra. What about if you have a situation? It's called hasra sofek. It's questionable when the person is being forewarned whether what he's doing is wrong or not wrong. It's not so simple. Right? No, person very specific, but it's still not clear. It's still not clear whether it's wrong. I'll give you an example. The Gemara says, let's say, no, sir, you're not permitted to leave over sacrificial meat until beyond dawn. And two witnesses go to a person, 10 minutes before dawn, he says, if you leave over the sacrificial meat beyond dawn, you're going to receive malchus. The Gemara says that's Hasra Sofik. Because the man says, it's irrelevant, I will do it. Because at that moment, it's not clear that it'll be no, sir. Because he has 10 minutes, he could actually consume it before that time. But if they say, if you have relations with this woman, you're going to get malchus because she's a grusha and he's a kohen, that's fact. If he has relations always is synonymous with doing the wrong thing. Here the noser doesn't exist yet. It only becomes noser if that time lapses. If you have the time lapse, then it's noser. So he's asking over here, how do you ever put a woman to death? It may never happen. It may never come into being. It may never become noser. There, but a grusha, if you marry her or you cohabit with her, it's a reality. That reality is a reality.
But it hasn't happened.
You can't.
It hasn't happened.
If you hold Hasra Sofik Lo Shmei Hasra, you cannot would. Therefore, you don't get malchus.
You never get malchus.
You'll never get, and that's why you don't get malchus. So he's asking a question. The question is, Tosas, we had malchus. A nozer drinks wine, he's liable for malchus. The Mishnah says if a nozer drinks, just guzzles wine, to every revius he drinks, and somebody's forewarning, don't drink, you're not permitted to drink, and in between gulps he says, it's irrelevant, and he keeps drinking. For every revius he drinks, he gets another set of malchus. So Tosas asks, and he asks it over here, seemingly, what happens if he goes now before a Bezdin, and he annuls the Nazirus? So annulment of Nazirus is what? Is retroactive. That means he was never a Nazir. So how do you ever give malchus to a Nazir? What would be, after you give him malchus, he goes before a Bezdin, and he's shoel, he knows the Nazirus. Retroactively, he was never a Nazir. So therefore, when initially he was forewarned, there's always a question whether he did the wrong thing. So how do you ever give him a Nazir malchus? There's always a question whether what he did was the wrong thing. That's Tosas can bring this in a moment. So the same thing here. How do you ever put the woman to death? Since when they forewarned her before she committed adultery, we're talking about she's going to be put to death. I mean, she was forewarned. But evidently, it's a faulty forewarning. Because maybe the husband will give her this kind of get, cancel the agent, unbeknown to the agent, the marriage will be annulled if that's the case. It's not a valid forewarning. It's a faulty forewarning. So how do you ever put a woman to death for adultery?
So we have a situation where when a young girl who's living with the father makes an oath, and then she breaks the oath, unknown to her, the father already annulled the oath.
It says she needs slicha v'kapara.
She needs slicha v'kapara.
Correct.
So the fact is, this person is Nazir.
He'll need slicha v'kapara.
He needs slicha v'kapara.
He'll need it. There's only specifically punishment, forewarning. Factually, he violated his Nazirus.
So if you
Let's say he never known it. Right, but we're asking if there's a prerequisite to punishment, forewarning, it has to be a valid forewarning. If it could always is in question whether retroactively it'll be or not be, the warning is not a valid warning. Right, so now it's between him and God. The Bezdin cannot intervene over here. That's Tos's question. How does the Bezdin give him malchus? Malchus, maybe the criteria for warning was never met.
At the time that he did the act, he was a Nazir.
He was a Nazir.
Right. So now, isn't that the end of the story?
No, because to receive malchus, you have to be forewarned.
No, he was forewarned. I mean,
No, but the forewarning is not valid unless it's certain that he's a Nazir. It's never certain. That's Tos's question, because he can always annul it.
At the time that forewarning occurred,
It's not
it was certain. At that
No.
instant.
No, it's not certain. What happens if tomorrow he goes to Bezdin?
No, I'm saying, but at that time, it was certain. At that point in time, it was certain. What happens in the future?
Wait. See, if you go based on the principle of chazaka, presumed status, the presumption is it's going to remain this way. That's going to be Tos's answer. Tos's factually says he does receive malchus. Nobody argues. So evidently the forewarning is a valid forewarning. So Tos says, you never know what's going to be tomorrow. Tos says it's irrelevant what's going to be tomorrow. Presently, the presumption he isn't Nazir today, we presume it will continue. Therefore, that's not called Hasor Sofik. No, it's better than Bashusha. Better than Bashusha. There, you can't punish a person if he's still a tzaddik, if he hasn't yet done the wrong thing.
So,
Here, he's done the wrong thing, and the question is, but he may do something which will annul the status that it's considered he didn't do the wrong thing.
with the woman who committed adultery and then got the marriage annulled through this method,
Same.
they wouldn't say you throw the book at her.
We say the same thing. Of course, until the husband does this, the presumption is he will not cancel it. He will not give her a get and cancel it. Present, she committed adultery. The forewarning is not. It's not a faulty forewarning. But you never know. The husband may do such a thing. Until he does it, we're not going to worry about it. Because the presumption is he hasn't done it, and the presumption is he won't do it. So presently, she's a married woman who committed adultery. Therefore, we're putting that woman to death.
Now, he's 5 malchus, and they're ready to give him malchus. He decides he doesn't want malchus. He goes and
If he goes, of course. If he goes and annuls it, it's not.
Get out of malchus by annulling it.
Correct. That's separate. Okay? How could you ever convict a woman who committed adultery? The husband may send her a get and cancel the agency. We have a way to undo illegitimacy. In every situation, why don't Chazal act on this, and we can clean up the act, clean up the mess. Omer Rabbeinu Tam, firstly, it's not a faulty forewarning. First, we have a rov. First, we have the concept of majority, without coming on to Chazal, the presumed status. So I don't have to worry about it.
What is the concept of majority?
Majority of people don't give a get and then they cancel the agency.
Okay.
That's firstly. So I don't have to. So she's from the majority. Secondly, ukamina cheskoso. There's a presumed status. Shehi achshav nesua. Right now she's married, and the presumption is she will continue to remain in that status. That's the chazaka. Dim lokein, because if you're not saying nozir shall you show say yayin or metame lemeisim, amai lokeh. A nozir, if he drinks wine or contaminate, how could you ever subject him to malchus? Im omer lo al tishta, chayvel kol achs v'achas. It's a mishnah. Vasor sofiki. Seemingly it should be a faulty forewarning. Shema yishal disiruso. He may go and null the nazirus. For sure you can't check. No, there's a rule that a lesser come on. The majority of people do not divorce their wives and cancel the agency. There's nothing to do with checking. No.
Either he did or he didn't.
Right now, the husband did nothing. What happens in 3 years from now, before we put it to death? He goes and he gives the get and cancels the agency. If he's done it, of course you check it out. Of course you give him a Here we're talking about the husband may do something in the future. I'm not going to worry about the future. The majority of people don't do such a thing. So this situation is part of the majority.
So even for that situation, Rabbi Gamliel decides to make a takana, that he has to tell the agent or the wife, even though it's rogue. Rogue people don't do this. So Rabbi Gamliel found it necessary to make this takana.
Well, first, maybe the majority don't do such a thing. First, the majority of people don't divorce their wives.
Right.
And even they divorce it, they abide by the takana.
So,
They abide by it. Right? And, right? They abide by the takana.
okay.
Now, this is important. We have a method to clean up the mess. Rabbeinu Tam said, if we know factually the intention of the husband was to protect his wife from being put to death, this is even if we know, we're not going to annul the marriage. Chazal, when they legislated this, was to be beneficial, not that it should be a pitfall, that this will allow women to commit adultery and somehow have this safe haven by giving the get and canceling the agent. Sherutach yubnos yisrael prutzes varayos. Famous in porno, right? Marza grushoso. Man divorces his wife, she has relations, she marries another man. The second man, she's widowed or divorced, she cannot go back to the first husband. Right? That's called Ma'aseh Grushoso. If he divorces, she has an illicit relationship, not married, and then she could come back to the husband. But if she marries another person, even though she's divorced or widowed, she cannot go back to the husband. Even though she's divorced or widowed from that second marriage, she cannot go back to the first husband. That's called Ma'aseh Grushoso. You cannot remarry your divorcee. Okay. She was she was divorced. No, she was divorced, and then she had the illicit relationship.
What's it called?
Ma'aseh Grushoso, bringing back the return of the divorcee. So the Sefarno says why? Famous Sefarno, because he could have a legitimate wife swapping situation. The man says, I'd like to be with your wife. He says, but I'm an observant Jew. He says, no problem. Divorce your wife. I'll have her for a year. I'll marry her, and then I'll return her. I'll divorce her. You take her back. So to prevent that from happening, Torah says, son, once you divorce, if she should remarry another man, they're both religious people. He's not going to have an illicit relationship. It'll be within the context of what? The marriage. Once she marries another man, she cannot come back to you any longer. So this will discourage this kind of behavior, or not allow this kind of behavior. That's the Sefarno. So Chazal say here, we're not this takana, this enactment is not to encourage this kind of behavior, right? So we're not going to null the marriage. That means she has to know she's going to be put to death if she commits adultery. Even if the husband should send the get and cancel the agent, she's going to be put to death.
The only case we're talking about was when a niece marries her uncle.
Doesn't make you could have
So
that is the classical
someone would
case.
do that.
No, that is the classical case. That's the classical case. You could have other cases.
But other husbands won't do this.
In today's society, the halacha is a sot is not permitted to husband. Right? In today's society, how many people, unfortunately, the wives commit adultery and they're forgiving and they get back together and they're living in sin? Husband's not permitted to be with his wife any longer. So, people, he says, but if it's clear to us that's not his intention, even though one of the consequences is she's not going to be put to death, we're going to do it.
Again, it doesn't conform with the way Chazal set it up, and so we're not going to give this exit.
Because again, it's contingent on their condoning, not condoning. In that situation, we condone the marriage. Because we're not going to give you that escape clause to behave in this promiscuous way. What's difficult? I mentioned to you, the halacha is if a person, we're going to have this later in the parak, a person throws a get within Dalar Amos of a woman, she's divorced. Now, how does the Dalar Amos become? Because it's the equivalent of her domain. How does that become her domain? Right? So there's one of two ways to learn. Either hefker as a hefker. Chazal say that the 4 cubits in your proximity, the radius of Dalar Amos, that's the equivalent of your domain. So if a lost article, an almost article falls there, you acquire it. If a get goes there, it's equivalent of putting the get in her chutz, in her courtyard. Sidei Rosh Hashanah. No, it doesn't work. Sidei, it's like off the beaten track. It's not a Rosh Hashanah. She's divorced. So if you say hefker bez nefker, it's not a problem. But some Rishonim say, Tzadkinu Rabban L'Kedushim. They annul the marriage retroactively. So why is she permitted to remarry? Not because she's really divorced. It appears, the appearance is because she has that document. But factually, she was never divorced on Torah level. So how is she permitted to remarry? You annul the marriage. So you have the same question. Every situation where a person goes and he divorces his wife by throwing the get within Dalar Amos, the marriage is retroactively annulled. She can remarry.
Don't we have ownership laws that I throw a $20 bill in the Dalar Amos of a person?
He acquires it.
He acquires it. And if somebody should try to preempt and take it, he's a thief.
Correct. Now, why is he a thief? Is there's the hefker on the dollar bill, on the $20 bill, or is it on the location, and therefore you acquire on the Torah level? The location is your location, and it's equivalent going into your courtyard.
So, I mean, doesn't that trump what we just said? Why do they have to come on and over?
Let me give you an example. For a $20 bill to be yours, you only need hefker, doesn't hefker. For the get to be her get, the get has to be put into hand by the husband. It was never put into, who transferred her domain? Chazal. They said the get, it's as if they gave her the get. The husband never gave her the get.
It's for the
Dalai says it doesn't work unless what they do, they give the domain becomes her domain. Now the domain serves that's the equivalent of her hand. So when the husband puts it in that domain, he's putting it in her hand.
That's hefker.
No, it's after it's going on the location.
On the location.
Right? In terms of acquiring something of monetary value, you don't need the domain. Because as they transfer the domain, they could transfer the object. But by get, where the gets go directly from the husband into her hand, they have to transfer the domain.
And they have the power to do that.
But the question is, did they do that? So that's a machlok shonen. Because it becomes complicated. One moment it is yours, next moment it's not yours. So rather than doing that, they annul the marriage retroactively. It's not no need. They transfer the money. The money becomes the person's. To be continued.